Hello and welcome to English Podcast Adventures. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, and we're so happy you've joined us today. This podcast is created especially for English learners like you. Our goal is simple: to help you speak and understand real, natural English through calm, friendly conversations.
That's right. We speak slowly and clearly, using everyday phrases and expressions that native speakers actually use. Think of us as your English-speaking friends, sitting together over a warm cup of tea, sharing stories and ideas that can help you on your language journey.
Today, we're going to talk about something that affects almost everyone: procrastination. You know, that feeling when you know you should do something important, but you keep putting it off. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll start next week. We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. Procrastination is when we delay or postpone tasks even when we know we should do them. It's that little voice in our head that says, maybe later, even when we really want to accomplish our goals. And for English learners, this can be especially challenging.
Before we dive deeper into this topic, I want to share something interesting with you. Did you know that over 96% of our listeners haven't subscribed to our channel yet? If you're enjoying this conversation and finding it helpful for your English learning, we'd be so grateful if you could take just a moment to subscribe. It really helps us continue creating these episodes for you.
Thank you so much for that support. It means the world to us. Now, let's get back to procrastination. Sophia, I think many of our listeners might relate to this: putting off English practice, avoiding speaking opportunities, or delaying that important email they need to write in English.
Exactly, Michael. I remember when I was learning a new language myself, I would always say, tomorrow I'll practice speaking for an hour. But tomorrow would come and I'd find a dozen reasons why I couldn't do it. Maybe I was too tired, or I convinced myself I needed to study grammar first, or I just felt too nervous.
That's such a common experience. Procrastination often comes from fear, doesn't it? Fear of making mistakes, fear of not being perfect, or fear of feeling uncomfortable. When we're learning English, these fears can feel even stronger because we're already outside our comfort zone.
That's beautifully put, Michael. Our comfort zone is that safe, familiar space where we feel secure and confident. When we step outside of it, like speaking English with a native speaker or writing an important email in English, we might feel anxious or uncertain. So our brain tries to protect us by saying, let's just wait a little longer.
But here's what I've learned over the years, and I hope this helps our listeners. Procrastination often makes us feel worse, not better. When we put things off, we carry this heavy feeling with us. It's like having a backpack full of rocks that we never take off.
What a perfect metaphor, Michael. That heavy feeling you mentioned, we often call it guilt or stress. It sits in the back of our mind, whispering reminders about what we haven't done yet. And sometimes the longer we wait, the bigger and scarier the task seems to become.
Yes, exactly. I call this the snowball effect. You know how a small snowball rolling down a hill gets bigger and bigger? Procrastination can work the same way. A simple task that might take 10 minutes today could feel like it will take hours if we wait until next week.
That's so true. I think about English learners who want to have a conversation with a colleague or a classmate. On Monday, it feels manageable, just a friendly chat. But if they keep putting it off, by Friday, it feels like climbing Mount Everest. The task hasn't actually changed, but their perception of it has grown.
The perception, that's the key word. How we see or think about something. Sometimes the story we tell ourselves about a task is much scarier than the task itself. We imagine all the things that could go wrong, all the mistakes we might make.
I love that you mentioned the story we tell ourselves. We're all storytellers in our own minds, aren't we? And sometimes we're telling ourselves horror stories when we could be telling adventure stories instead. Like, instead of thinking, what if I embarrass myself speaking English? We could think, what if I learn something new about myself today?
That's beautiful, Sophia. Changing our internal story, our self-talk, can be incredibly powerful. But let's be honest with our listeners, it's not always easy. Sometimes we know logically what we should do, but emotionally we still feel stuck.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to be gentle with ourselves about this. Procrastination isn't a character flaw or a sign that we're lazy people. Often it's just our mind's way of trying to protect us from discomfort or potential failure.
That's such an important point. Being gentle with ourselves, showing ourselves compassion, is crucial. I've noticed that when people are harsh or critical with themselves about procrastinating, it often makes the problem worse. It's like adding fuel to a fire.
Yes, self-criticism can create a vicious cycle. We procrastinate, then we feel bad about procrastinating, then we feel even less motivated to do the task. It's like being stuck in quicksand. The more we struggle, the deeper we sink.
What a vivid image. So, if harsh self criticism doesn't work, what does? I think one of the most powerful things we can do is start small, really, really small. Sometimes we procrastinate because the goal feels too big, too overwhelming.
I completely agree. There's this wonderful concept called baby steps, taking the tiniest possible action toward our goal. For English learners, instead of saying, I need to practice speaking for an hour every day, maybe start with, I'll say one sentence out loud in English right now.
That's perfect. One sentence. Not perfect pronunciation, not complex grammar, just one simple sentence. Maybe describing what you see around you or what you're feeling in this moment. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress.
And you know what often happens when we take that first tiny step? We feel a little spark of accomplishment. It's small, but it's real. And sometimes that spark gives us enough energy to take one more small step.
Exactly. Momentum is powerful. An object at rest tends to stay at rest, but an object in motion tends to stay in motion. It's much easier to keep going once we've started, even if we started with something incredibly small.
I'm thinking about our listeners right now, and I wonder if some of them might be feeling a mix of hope and skepticism. Maybe thinking, this sounds nice, but you don't understand how stuck I really feel.
I think that's a very natural response, Sophia. And honestly, there have been times in my own life when I felt so overwhelmed by everything I wasn't doing that I couldn't even see where to begin. It's like standing in a messy room and feeling paralyzed because you don't know which item to pick up first.
That's such a relatable image, Michael. And when we feel that way, sometimes the kindest thing we can do is just pick up one small thing. Not the most important thing, not the most logical thing, just one small, manageable thing.
Yes, and here's something I've learned that might surprise our listeners. Sometimes the thing we're procrastinating about isn't actually the real problem. Sometimes we're avoiding one task because we're worried about something completely different.
Oh, that's fascinating. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say someone keeps putting off practicing English pronunciation. On the surface, it seems like they're just avoiding the practice. But maybe the real issue is that they're afraid of sounding different from their family or friends. Maybe they're worried that improving their English will somehow change who they are.
That's so insightful. So the procrastination is actually protecting something deeper, their sense of identity or belonging. It makes perfect sense why someone would resist that, even unconsciously.
Exactly. And this is why being curious about our procrastination, rather than just fighting it, can be so helpful. Instead of asking, why am I so lazy? We might ask, what am I really afraid of here?
I love that shift from judgment to curiosity. It's like becoming a gentle detective in your own life, trying to understand rather than criticize. And often when we understand the real fear, we can address it more directly.
That's beautifully put, Sophia. And sometimes just naming the fear out loud takes away some of its power. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The scary shadows suddenly become ordinary furniture.
Speaking of naming things out loud, I wonder if our listeners have ever tried talking to themselves about their procrastination. Not in a harsh way, but almost like talking to a good friend who's struggling.
That's such a wonderful suggestion, Sophia. Self-compassion, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd show a friend. If a friend came to you and said, I keep putting off my English practice and I feel terrible about it, what would you say to them?
I'd probably say something like, that's okay. Learning a language is challenging and it's normal to feel resistant sometimes. What's one tiny thing you could do today just to reconnect with English? I definitely wouldn't say, you're so lazy and undisciplined.
Exactly. Yet so often that harsh voice is exactly what we use with ourselves. But imagine if we could become our own encouraging friend, our own gentle coach. How different would that feel?
It would feel revolutionary, honestly. And I think it connects to something else important, celebrating small wins. When we do take that baby step, when we do write that one sentence or practice that one word, acknowledging it matters.
Yes! Celebration doesn't have to be big or dramatic. It could be as simple as taking a deep breath and thinking, I did that. Good for me. Or telling yourself, that felt good to take action.
And here's something interesting I've noticed. When we celebrate small actions, we're more likely to want to repeat them. It's like our brain starts to associate taking action with feeling good rather than with pressure and stress.
That makes perfect sense. We're essentially rewiring our relationship with action and effort. Instead of action feeling like punishment, it starts to feel like self-care.
I love that phrase, action as self-care, because really, when we do the things that matter to us, even in small ways, we're taking care of our future selves. We're being kind to the person we'll be tomorrow.
And for English learners specifically, I think it's important to remember that progress isn't always visible. Some days you might practice speaking and feel like you made mistakes, but your brain was still working, still learning, still building those neural pathways.
That's such an important point, Michael. Language learning happens in layers, like a tree growing rings that you can't see from the outside. Every time you engage with English, reading, listening, speaking, even thinking in English, you're growing those invisible rings.
What a beautiful metaphor. And sometimes we need to trust that process, even when we can't see immediate results. Trust that showing up consistently, even in small ways, is creating change beneath the surface.
It reminds me of planting seeds. When you plant a seed in the ground, for weeks it might look like nothing is happening. But underground, roots are growing, getting stronger, preparing for the moment when the plant will break through the soil.
And our English skills, our confidence, our ability to overcome procrastination, they're all like those seeds. Every small action, every moment of practice, every time we choose courage over comfort, we're nurturing those roots.
You know, Michael, I'm thinking about our listeners again, and I want to say something directly to them. If you're listening to this and feeling inspired, but also a little overwhelmed, that's completely normal. You don't have to change everything at once.
Absolutely, Sophia. And if you're someone who has tried to overcome procrastination before and felt like you failed, I want you to know that every attempt teaches you something. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
That's such a compassionate way to look at it. Each time we try, we learn more about ourselves, about what works for us and what doesn't. We're gathering information, not failing.
And here's something practical our listeners can try today, right now. Think of one small English-related task you've been putting off. Maybe it's sending an email, or watching a video, or practicing pronunciation of one word. Just one.
And instead of committing to doing the whole task, just commit to starting it. Set a timer for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, and begin. Tell yourself you can stop after 2 minutes if you want to.
Often, starting is the hardest part, and you might surprise yourself. After 2 minutes, you might feel like continuing, but even if you don't, you've broken the ice. You've proven to yourself that you can begin.
And remember to be kind to yourself throughout this process. Procrastination isn't a moral failing. It's just a human response to feeling overwhelmed or afraid. You're not broken, and you don't need to be fixed.
You just need to be supported, encouraged, and reminded of your own strength. Because you do have that strength.
Every day that you choose to listen to English, to learn something new, to step outside your comfort zone, that's evidence of your courage.
As we wrap up today's conversation, I want to leave you with this thought. Be patient with yourself. Learning English is a journey, and overcoming procrastination is part of that journey. Some days will be easier than others, and that's perfectly okay.
Remember, you're not racing against anyone else. You're growing at your own pace, in your own way. Every small step matters. Every moment of practice counts. Every time you choose to try again, you're winning.
Thank you so much for joining us today on English Podcast Adventures. We hope this conversation has given you some gentle tools and encouragement for your English learning journey.
We'd love to have you join us for our next episode, where we'll continue exploring topics that matter to English learners like you. Until then, be kind to yourself, take those small steps, and remember, we're cheering you on.
Keep adventuring with English, and we'll see you soon. Take care.